Young Dolph's murder wasn't no rap scuffle, it was a very public hit that shook the whole city and left Memphis bleeding. Now new details are coming out, and they've got the streets talking like never before.
How much money was it supposed to be?
100,000 on Dolph.
We are talking 100 bands to take out one of Memphis's biggest legends. But who dropped the bag? Was it truly Gotti? Let's get into it. The alleged hit. What really went down with Young Dolph's murder? On November 17, 2021, the rap game lost a real one when Memphis legend Young Dolph was gunned down while copping some cookies at Makeda's homemade butter cookies in his hometown. The Paper Route Empire boss was just trying to grab some treats before a Thanksgiving turkey giveaway he had planned for the community. That's the type of dude Dolph was, giving back to the streets that made him. But somebody had other plans, and those plans were deadly.
The Memphis police chief is asking everyone to stay home tonight after rapper Young Dolph is gunned down and killed at a South Memphis cookie shop.
Surveillance footage captured the whole thing. Two masked gunmen hopping out of a white Mercedes, walking up to the cookie shop window and letting off shots that hit Dolph 22 times. 22 times, fam. The autopsy confirmed what we already knew. This wasn't just a shooting, this was an execution, a straight up hit. No chance, no warning, just cold-blooded murder in broad daylight at a spot Dolph was known to frequent. This wasn't some random act of violence. This had all the markings of a calculated assassination. For years, hip-hop heads been speculating about the beef between Yo Gotti and Young Dolph, two of Memphis's finest, both trying to claim the crown as the king of Memphis. That title alone was enough to spark tension, but there was way more to this rivalry than just rap caps. This beef had real money, real street politics, and real blood behind it. We're talking about two empires colliding. Yo Gotti's collective music group, CMG, versus Dolph's Paper Route Empire, PRE, with millions of dollars and street credibility on the line. The streets of Memphis had been buzzing about this beef for years, with both sides throwing subliminal shots in their music. But nobody expected it would end with one of them in a body bag over some cookies. The murder sent shockwaves through the rap community, with fans demanding answers and justice for Dolph. Who would put a hit on one of the most respected independent artists in the game? And could it really be traced back to his long-standing rival, Yo Gotti? Fast forward to September 2024. And we finally got some answers when Justin Johnson, aka Straight Drop, was put on trial for Dolph's murder. The courtroom drama was straight fire, exposing all kinds of secrets that had the internet going nuts. Prosecutors, led by Shelby County Deputy District Attorney Paul Hagerman, dropped a bomb on the courtroom when they alleged that Anthony Big Jook Mims Yo Gotti's own brother and a key figure in collective music group, CMG, had put a $100,000 bounty on Young Dolph's head.
Who had a hit on whose head?
Big Jook had a hit on Dolph head or whatnot.
How much money was it supposed to be?
100,000 on Dolph head.
This wasn't just some street rumor or social media speculation. This was being presented as evidence in a murder trial by the district attorney's office. The prosecution wasn't playing around, claiming that Big Jook had been so enraged by Dolph's success and disrespect towards CMG that he decided to put money on his head. 100 racks to silence one of Memphis's most authentic voices forever. The courtroom was shook, and social media exploded with the news that Yo Gotti's own flesh and blood might have been behind the hit on Dolph. But the real tea was spilled when Cornelius Smith took the stand. Smith, who had already pleaded guilty to being one of the gunmen, started singing like he was trying to land a record deal. He admitted that he and Johnson were the shooters caught on camera, but claimed they were just the triggermen in a much bigger conspiracy orchestrated from the top. Smith's testimony painted a vivid picture of how the murder went down. He described waiting outside Makeda's Cookies, knowing Dolph frequented the spot. When they spotted his camouflage Corvette pull up, they knew it was go time. Smith claimed they had been given detailed information about Dolph's schedule and habits, suggesting this wasn't just some random hit, but a meticulously planned execution. According to Smith's testimony, Big Jook had offered a whopping $100,000 for the hit on Dolph. The plan was to split it three ways, $40,000 each for Smith and Johnson, with $20,000 going to Hernandez Govin, the alleged middleman who set up the whole thing. Smith claimed he was desperate for money after his son's death and only received $800 before getting locked up. He also dropped another bombshell, claiming someone from CMG paid $50,000 for his legal fees after his arrest, though he couldn't name names. The prosecution's case got even juicier when they revealed that on the day of the murder, Johnson's phone had made a call to a number associated with Big Jook. Phone records presented as evidence showed communication patterns that aligned with the conspiracy timeline presented by prosecutors. They also highlighted that Johnson had connections to CMG and had been incentivized with promises of a record deal as part of his payment for carrying out the hit. As the trial progressed, more details emerged about the alleged role of Big Jook in orchestrating the hit. Prosecutors claimed that Big Jook had become increasingly frustrated with Dolph's success and refusal to join CMG. They alleged that Dolph's diss tracks targeting CMG, especially those mentioned Big Jook specifically, had pushed him over the edge. One of such tracks is Play with Yo, where Dolph outrightly calls him a big bit. You went from my biggest fan to my biggest hater. Facts. Begging me to sign with you, but I had too much paper. Facts. Still that same that used to front your big brother. Facts. Found out he a too. Now I call him your big sister. The $100,000 bounty wasn't just about eliminating a rival. It was about sending a message to anyone who would dare disrespect CMG in the future. It's worth noting that hours before Dolph's murder, Yo Gotti had posted a cryptic Instagram story that read, "Good morning. Don't value the things you don't have over the things you do." Some fans interpreted this as suspicious given the timing, though there's no evidence directly connecting this post to knowledge of the planned hit. Still, the coincidence had people talking. Memphis police took the potential for retaliation seriously, stationing officers outside Yo Gotti's restaurant, Privé, located about 10 miles from the crime scene, though no specific threat was reported. The entire city was on edge, with authorities fearing the murder could spark a wave of retaliatory violence between the rival camps.
Tonight, we strongly encourage everyone to stay home if you do not have to be out.
It's worth noting that Yo Gotti has maintained complete silence about Dolph's murder, never publicly commenting on the tragedy or the allegations involving his brother. This silence has been interpreted in different ways. Some see it as a sign of respect for the deceased, others as legal caution given the ongoing investigation, and still others as suspicious given the history between the two rappers. We also need to remember that Yo Gotti had been cleared by police in previous incidents involving Dolph, most notably the 2017 Los Angeles shooting, where Gotti was initially named as a person of interest, but later explicitly cleared by the LAPD. Throughout their beef, there's no evidence that Gotti personally engaged in violence against Dolph, despite the numerous diss tracks and verbal jabs they exchanged. So is this whole narrative true? Not exactly. While Yo Gotti himself didn't pull the trigger or appear on any surveillance footage, the trial revealed serious allegations about his brother and his label being connected to the murder plot. The story isn't as simple and is actually much deeper and more complex than most people realize, and we're just getting started. The beef that led to bloodshed, Yo Gotti vs. Young Dolph. Let's rewind the tape and see how this deadly beef even popped off in the first place. To understand why Young Dolph ended up in a body bag, you gotta understand the history between him and Yo Gotti, a rivalry that had the entire Memphis rap scene choosing sides for years. This beef wasn't born overnight. It started brewing around 2014 when Young Dolph, an up-and-coming Memphis rapper with serious street cred, allegedly turned down an offer to sign with Yo Gotti's collective music group, CMG label. Instead of joining Gotti's roster, Dolph chose to stay independent and build his own paper route empire, PRE, from the ground up. In the music industry, rejecting a major player like Gotti can be seen as a direct challenge, especially when you're both hustling in the same city. For those who don't know, Memphis has a unique hip-hop scene with its own distinct sound and culture. It's given birth to legends like 3-6 Mafia, 8 Ball and MJG, and more recently artists like Yo Gotti and Young Dolph. But Memphis isn't big enough for multiple kings, and both Gotti and Dolph had ambitions to wear the crown. When Dolph chose independence over joining Gotti's camp, he was essentially declaring that he didn't need Gotti's cosign to make it. A move that many believe Gotti took as disrespect. Dolph was the epitome of independence in an industry that often forces artists to sign unfavorable deals. He was making millions without a major label, showing other artists they could do it too. His success was a direct challenge to the traditional model represented by more established artists like Gotti. This philosophical difference, independence versus signing to a major label, was at the heart of their conflict. Dolph made his feelings crystal clear in February 2016 when he tweeted, "Bra went from being my #1 fan and wanting to sign me to being my biggest hater. Facts." He didn't name Gotti directly, but the streets knew exactly who he was talking about. Then, just a week later, Dolph dropped his debut album titled King of Memphis, a direct shot at Gotti, who had been claiming that crown for years. The album title was essentially Dolph saying, "I'm the real king now." In hip-hop, claiming a title like that without paying homage to those who came before you is considered a major slight. For Gotti, who had been grinding in the Memphis scene for years before Dolph emerged, this likely felt like a young buck trying to take his spot without earning it. The album debuted at number 49 on Billboard, proving Dolph wasn't just talking, he was actually making moves that backed up his bold claims. But the tension remained mostly under the surface until early 2017, when the beef exploded into the public eye. In January 2017, Dolph performed at a show in Memphis, where he reportedly made some disrespectful comments about Gotti. This was no longer just industry talk, it was becoming a public spectacle. The tension simmered until February 2017, when Dolph took the beef to another level by releasing Play With Yo, a scathing diss track aimed directly at Gotti. "You went from my biggest fan to my biggest hater. Facts. Begging me to sign with you, but I had too much paper. Facts. Still that same that used to front your big brother. Facts. Found out he a too. Now I call him your big sister." The cover art for the single showed missed calls from Yo Gotti Baby Mama, leaving no doubt about who Dolph was targeting. The lyrics were personal, disrespectful, and in the streets of Memphis, the kind of stuff that doesn't just stay on wax. Gotti responded with his own subliminal shots on Don't Beef With Me, featuring his CMG artists, but he was more calculated, never mentioning Dolph by name. But that's when the beef left the studio and hit the streets for real. Just weeks after these diss tracks dropped, on February 25th, 2017, Dolph's SUV was shot at over 100 times in Charlotte, North Carolina during CIAA weekend. In what seemed like a miracle, Dolph walked away unharmed. His vehicle was bulletproof. Always the businessman, Dolph flipped the assassination attempt into content, dropping his Bulletproof album shortly after, with tracks like 100 Shots directly referencing the incident. The album's track list included songs with titles like In Charlotte, But I'm Bulletproof, and 100 Shots, making it clear that Dolph wasn't backing down after the attempt on his life. Instead, he was turning the incident into a badge of honor, further cementing his image as an indestructible force in hip-hop. This ability to survive and thrive after such a violent attack only added to Dolph's legend in the streets. The plot thickened when Black Young Dolph, one of Gotti's CMG artists, was charged in connection with the Charlotte shooting. The incident came after Young Dolph had posted videos threatening Dolph, calling him a and questioning his Memphis credentials. Young Dolph had even rolled up to Dolph's hood, Castalia, with guns looking for him. Though Young Dolph was later released on bail and the charges were eventually dropped, the message was clear. This beef had escalated beyond rap. Black Young Dolph's involvement brought a new dimension to the beef. As one of Gotti's most aggressive and outspoken artists, Young Dolph seemed to be taking on the role of enforcer for CMG. His actions suggested that the feud wasn't just between Dolph and Gotti personally, but had expanded to include their entire camps. This escalation from individual beef to label warfare raised the stakes significantly. In the months following the Charlotte shooting, both camps seemed to back off a bit, perhaps realizing how serious things had become. But the peace wouldn't last long. As if one shooting wasn't enough, on September 26, 2017, Dolph was shot multiple times outside the Loews Hollywood Hotel in Los Angeles, a hotel where Yo Gotti was also staying at the time. This coincidence had people immediately pointing fingers at Gotti. Corey McClendon, an associate of Gotti's, was arrested and charged with attempted murder, but was later released without charges. The LAPD initially named Gotti as a person of interest, but later cleared him of any involvement. Dolph was seriously injured in this shooting, suffering wounds to his arms and buttocks. He was hospitalized, but survived once again, further enhancing his reputation as someone who couldn't be taken down. While recovering in the hospital, Dolph took to social media to promote his upcoming album, Thinking Out Loud, showing his relentless hustle even in the face of death. The fact that this second shooting happened at a hotel where Gotti was also staying was too much of a coincidence for many fans to ignore. Although Gotti was cleared by police, the court of public opinion had already connected the dots, assuming his involvement despite the lack of legal evidence. This incident further polarized fans of Memphis hip-hop, with each side becoming more entrenched in their support for either Dolph or Gotti. Despite surviving 2 assassination attempts in 1 year, Dolph remained defiant. In an interview with The Breakfast Club in 2017, he subtly took a dig at CMG.
What they were trying to do, they couldn't get it done. You know what I'm saying? It was, you lose.
Gotti's approach to the beef was notably different from Dolph's. While Dolph was direct and confrontational in his disses, Gotti often took a more diplomatic approach in public, rarely addressing Dolph by name. This strategy allowed him to maintain plausible deniability while still allowing his camp to respond through other means. It's a classic move from the music industry playbook. Let your soldiers do the dirty work while keeping your own hands clean. Some industry insiders speculated the beef might involve more personal issues. In a 2017 interview with BET, Dolph hinted that the conflict might involve a woman, though he remained vague about the details. It ain't got nothing to do with no music at all, Dolph said cryptically, suggesting the root of their issues went beyond professional competition. These hints at personal issues added another layer to the already complex beef. Rap beefs often involve a mix of professional rivalry, street politics, and personal grudges. If Dolph's suggestion was true, it would mean their conflict had dimensions that weren't visible to the public, private grievances that could make reconciliation even more difficult than a purely professional dispute. After the 2017 shootings, the beef seemed to quiet down publicly. Both artists focused on their careers, with Dolph continuing to build PRE and dropping successful independent projects, while Gotti expanded CMG's roster with artists like Moneybagg Yo, 42 Dugg, and ESTG. However, according to witnesses' testimony in the 2024 murder trial, the tension never truly disappeared. This period of relative calm on the surface didn't mean the beef was resolved. It was merely dormant, like a volcano that seems quiet but is building pressure beneath the surface. Both artists continued to expand their empires, with Dolph's Pre signing artists like Key Glock, who would go on to have significant success. Meanwhile, Gotti's CMG was becoming one of the most powerful independent labels in hip-hop, with a roster of hitmakers that dominated the Memphis scene and beyond. What made this beef particularly dangerous was that it wasn't just about two rappers exchanging words, it was about two powerful camps in Memphis, CMG versus PRE. As reported in Medium, both labels had street ties, and when record label beefs involve street politics, the consequences can be deadly. It's not just about chart positions and record sales. It's about territory, respect, and power. The street element cannot be overstated. Both Dolph and Gotti came from neighborhoods where respect is everything and disrespect often leads to violence. Their music repeatedly referenced their street backgrounds and connections, creating expectations about how they would handle conflict. When you've built your brand on being authentic to the streets, backing down from disrespect can damage your credibility, creating a dangerous dynamic where de-escalation is seen as a weakness. During this period of outward calm, Dolph continued to cement his status as one of hip-hop's most successful independent artists. His 2020 album, Rich Slave, debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, his highest charting project to date. This commercial success, achieved without major label backing, was a powerful statement about his business model and a continued challenge to the traditional industry represented by labels like CMG. According to prosecutors at Justin Johnson's trial, CMG wanted Dolph to join their label, but he declined, choosing to remain independent. This rejection, combined with Dolph's success and his diss tracks targeting CMG and Big Jook specifically, allegedly escalated tensions to the breaking point. The prosecution claimed that Big Jook became so enraged by Dolph's disrespect that he put the $100,000 bounty on his head. The idea that a deal rejection could lead to murder might seem extreme to those outside the industry, but it highlights the intense business rivalries that can develop in hip-hop. Dolph's independence wasn't just a personal choice. It was a business model that directly competed with CMG's approach to artist development. Every time Dolph succeeded independently, it was an implicit challenge to the value proposition offered by labels like CMG. The deadly climax came 4 years after the last public incident, suggesting that in the streets, beefs don't have an expiration date. They can simmer beneath the surface for years before erupting in violence. By November 2021, Dolph had established himself as a successful independent artist and a competitor to CMG's dominance in Memphis. According to the trial testimony, that success, combined with the long-standing disrespect, was enough for Big Jook to allegedly order the hit.
Memphis rapper Young Dolph was shot and killed at a bakery today. Young Dolph, whose real name is Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., was reportedly buying cookies at this bakery in his hometown when someone drove up and shot him.
What's particularly tragic about this beef is that it represents a pattern we've seen too many times in hip-hop talented artists from the same city who could have elevated each other instead of becoming locked in deadly rivalries. As noted by WRVU Nashville, some fans even speculated that parts of the beef might have been promotional, but the violence and ultimate murder proved this was all too real. The Memphis rap scene lost one of its most authentic voices when Dolph was killed, and the ripple effects of this beef would continue long after his death, affecting both camps in ways no one could have predicted. The sad irony is that both Dolph and Gotti came from similar backgrounds, faced similar struggles, and could have potentially created something greater together than they did as rivals. Instead, their beef became another cautionary tale about how hip-hop conflicts can escalate from words to wounds to death. The aftermath: Big Jook's death and the cycle of violence. In the aftermath of Young Dolph's murder trial, music industry figures like Wack 100 speculated on platforms like Clubhouse that CMG could potentially be classified as a gang if prosecutors decided to pursue charges against Yo Gotti based on the allegations involving his brother. Legal experts have pointed out that using RICO charges, Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, against record labels is becoming more common, as seen in the case against Young Thug's YSL Records. If prosecutors could establish a pattern of criminal activity linked to CMG as an organization, it could potentially lead to conspiracy charges against other members, even those not directly involved in particular crimes. Interestingly, despite the serious allegations made during the trial about his brother's involvement in Dolph's murder, Yo Gotti has maintained complete silence on the matter. Gotti's approach has been to continue focusing on his music and business ventures, releasing new projects and expanding CMG's roster despite the controversy surrounding the label. In January 2022, just months after Dolph's murder, Gotti released his album CM10 Free Game, which debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. The album made no direct references to Dolph or the beef, suggesting Gotti was attempting to move past the controversy and focus on his career. Some industry observers have noted that Gotti's silence might be strategic from both a legal and business perspective. Public statements about an ongoing murder investigation could potentially be used against him if authorities ever did decide to pursue charges related to CMG's alleged involvement. Additionally, addressing the situation might bring more attention to allegations that could damage CMG's reputation and business relationships. The loss of Big Juke in January 2024 added another layer of tragedy to the already complex situation.
Sources close